My best friend of 15 years got my wife pregnant, while I was working double shifts to pay for the house we all thought was ours. So I exposed him to everyone we knew, took my daughter, walked out, and never looked back. They both lost everything. I gained mine back. I'm Caden. 34 years old. I work as a long-haul freight dispatcher for a regional trucking company, out of Columbus, Ohio. Not glamorous, but it pays well when you're willing to put in the hours, and I've always been willing. My wife, my daughter. Our house on Fieldstone Drive. I thought I was doing it for them. Turns out I was building a life for 3 people who didn't include me in their plans. Let me back up. My wife and I met 11 years ago at a mutual friend's 4th of July party. She was finishing her nursing degree at Ohio State. Funny, sharp. The kind of person who remembers small details about people and brings them up weeks later just to make you feel seen. We dated for 2 years, got married at a park pavilion in Dublin because neither of us wanted the big venue hassle, and bought our house 3 years after that. We have 1 daughter together, Harper. She just turned 7 in March and is obsessed with anything that involves horses or slime, sometimes both at once. My best friend. I'll just call him my best friend because saying his name still makes my jaw tight. I've known him since we were 19. We met freshman year at Sinclair Community College. He was studying business, I was in logistics and supply chain. We clicked because we both grew up without much. Both worked jobs while taking classes. Both thought the world owed us nothing, and we'd have to claw for everything ourselves. He was the best man at my wedding. He held Harper the night she was born. When my father had his first cardiac episode 2 years ago, he drove me to the hospital at 2 a.m., without being asked. I trusted him the way you only trust someone you've watched show up for you in the hard moments. After the wedding, he became part of our daily rotation the way best friends do when you're all adults, without enough time. Sunday barbecues. Helping us move furniture when we finally bought the house. Thanksgiving dinners when his own family's situation got complicated. His parents split badly when we were in our mid-20s, and holiday logistics never really recovered. My wife always said he was like a brother to her. She said it so often it stopped registering. I started noticing things about 8 months ago. Small things at first. My wife had always been a pretty open phone user. She'd leave it face up on the counter, show me funny videos, hand it to me to look up directions while she drove. Then one day it was face down on the kitchen table. Then there was a passcode she hadn't had before. When I mentioned it, she said the hospital had sent a security memo about patient privacy, and she was trying to get in the habit. Made complete sense. I believed her. My best friend started coming around less on weekends. Before, he'd just show up. Text me at noon on a Saturday saying he was 20 minutes away, bring a 6-pack, help me with whatever yard project I had going. Then he started having reasons. New gym routine. Helping, a buddy move, picking up extra consulting hours. I told myself he was probably seeing someone. We'd all been hoping he'd meet someone serious for years, didn't think to ask more questions. My schedule at work turned brutal last fall. We lost 2 dispatchers to a competitor, and instead of replacing them fast, the company just distributed the load across those of us who stayed. I was doing 60-hour weeks through October and November. Barely home for dinner, too tired to do much when I was. My wife picked up the slack with Harper, school pickups and activities and bedtime routines. She said it was fine. We'd get through the crunch and take a real vacation in the spring. The thing about dispatching freight is that you can sometimes do it remotely, if the systems are cooperating and you've got a quiet spot. My company is flexible about that on certain days. So on a Tuesday in January, I drove my truck into our neighborhood, made it at 11:40 in the morning, planning to grab lunch at home and work from the kitchen table for the afternoon. My best friend's truck was in my driveway, not unusual on its own. He'd been to our house 100 times. But it was a Tuesday at noon. And he'd told me, last week he had back-to-back client meetings, through mid-January. I sat at the end of the street for probably 90 seconds, just staring at it. Then I drove past my own house and parked 2 blocks down. I don't know exactly what I thought I was doing. Some part of my brain hadn't fully formed the thought yet. I walked back to my house, went in through the side gate to the backyard like I have 1,000 times, and let myself in through the back door. The kitchen was empty, 2 coffee mugs on the counter, her laptop open, his jacket on the back of a chair. I heard them upstairs. I went back outside, sat on the patio in 32-degree weather and just breathed. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough that my hands went numb. Long enough that I heard the front door close, and his truck start and pull out of the driveway. I went back inside. My wife came downstairs 10 minutes later in fresh clothes, hair still slightly damp at the ends. Hey, you're home early.
Yep.
Left something behind. She made a comment about the cold, poured herself more coffee, and started telling me something about Harper's upcoming school project. And I stood there and listened and said the right things, and my entire chest felt like it had been filled with concrete. I needed to know everything before I said anything. That was the only thought I could hold on to. That afternoon, While she was at the grocery store, I went through our credit card statements online. We have a joint card we use for household expenses and a shared savings account. I went back 6 months. Holiday Inn Express on a Wednesday in October when I was in Dayton for a regional carrier meeting. $89. Charged to the joint card. She had told me she was taking Harper to her mother's that night. A restaurant, called The Lantern in Worthington. $94. A Thursday. I'd worked until 9 that night. She said she'd eaten leftovers. Amazon orders for things I didn't recognize. A weighted blanket in a color we don't own. A particular brand of candles she'd told me she hated because the scent gave her headaches. I pulled up the cell plan. We're on a family plan together and I pay the bill. I can see data usage and call logs, though not the content. Her data usage had spiked significantly on days that corresponded with the hotel charge and several of the restaurant visits. I opened her work bag that she leaves by the door. Inside her planner, she's old-fashioned about paper planners. I found dates circled with small letters next to them. Not our initials. His. First initial, last initial. 8 weeks of Tuesday and Thursday circles. I put everything back exactly as I found it. Drove to a parking lot. Sat there until I could breathe normally. Then I drove to my father's house across town and had dinner with him, without saying a word about any of it. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering information, the same way I approach a complicated freight problem, systematically, without emotion, one layer at a time. I took photos of the planner pages when she left it unattended. I documented the credit card charges with screenshots. I filed them in a folder on my personal Google Drive, not on our shared family account. I noted the dates, cross-referenced them with my own work calendar, confirmed which ones I had been out of the house or out of town. I didn't confront either of them. I didn't let on. I was the same husband I'd always been, maybe even more attentive. I cooked dinner twice that week. Took Harper to her Saturday riding lesson without being asked. Smiled at the right times. Died a little every day. On the third Friday in January, I came home from work and found my wife in the bathroom with the door shut. I knocked and she said she'd be out in a minute. I heard her open a cabinet, then the trash can. After she came out and went to the kitchen, I went into the bathroom. In the trashes, under some tissue was a pregnancy test box. I fished it out, 2 tests inside the box. Both used. Both positive. She was pregnant. We'd talked about a second kid on and off for years, but had basically landed on Harper being our one. We weren't trying. We were barely having the kind of marriage where that would have been a realistic accident. I put the box back. Went to the kitchen. Ate dinner with my family, helped Harper with her reading homework. Gave her a bath, read her a book, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. Went downstairs and poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey, and stared at the kitchen wall, until my wife came to tell me she was going to bed. I had everything I needed. What I built next took 3 days to put together. First I called a family law attorney. I knew one through a work connection. She'd handled a colleague's divorce a few years back, and had a reputation for being precise and unrelenting. I laid out the situation without emotion, just facts and dates. She told me Ohio is a no-fault divorce state, but that adultery affects property division and custody in ways that still matter significantly. She told me to document everything, change nothing about my behavior, and come back when I was ready to file. I was ready that afternoon. Second, I moved money. We had a joint savings account with $42,000 in it. Money we'd been saving for a kitchen renovation and Harper's college fund. I moved my half $21,000 to a personal account I'd had before we married that she didn't have access to. Legal, clean, documented. Third, I called my wife's mother. Not to tell her what had happened. Not yet. Just a regular check-in call. Established warm contact. I'd need her later. On a Saturday night, I told my wife I was driving over to help my best friend move some furniture he'd bought off Marketplace. She said okay without looking up from her phone. I drove to his apartment complex instead. He buzzed me up. Opened the door looking genuinely surprised to see me, which told me something. He was in gym clothes. The apartment smelled like takeout. He grinned and said he wasn't expecting me. I know, I said. That's the point. I watched his face. Dude, let me explain. I pulled out my phone and showed him the hotel receipt, the dates in the planner, the photos of the tests. I had printed some of them out. I held them up one by one. He didn't try to lie, I'll give him that. He sat down on his couch and put his face in his hands. And said it started at a neighborhood thing in September when I was working late and it just happened and he knew it was wrong. And he had been trying to figure out how to tell me. 8 months isn't trying to figure out how to tell me. 8 months is a decision. I told him one thing and I said it once. I need you to understand that I'm not angry right now. I will be, but right now I'm just here so you know that I know. Then I left. I drove home, put Harper to bed and told my wife I needed to talk to her downstairs after Harper was asleep. She came down 20 minutes later and sat on the couch. I sat across from her and set my phone on the coffee table face up with the folder of evidence pulled up. I want you to understand something before I say anything else, I told her. I've been documenting this for 3 weeks. The hotel, the restaurant, The date's in your planner. I've already talked to a lawyer. Whatever happens next, I already everything. She went pale. The pregnancy, I said. Whose is it? It took her a long time to answer. Too long, I don't know for sure. That's an answer, I said. That's exactly the answer it is. She started crying. Real tears, the kind that aren't strategy. I've learned to tell the difference. She said it wasn't supposed to get this far, that she'd been confused and lonely, and that didn't excuse it, but she needed me to understand the context. I listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When she was done, I said one sentence. You have 2 weeks to make arrangements. She looked at me. I'm staying in the house. My name is on the mortgage, and I'll be buying you out. Harper stays here and you can have scheduled time. I'm not going to war with you over our daughter, but she lives in this house and goes to her school and keeps her routine. Those aren't negotiations. Dustin, she whispered. Wait, my name is Caden, I said. You should still know that. I got up and went to bed. Slept 4 hours. Got up at 5, made coffee, went through everything I'd already filed with my attorney. On Sunday morning I texted everyone in our friend group. 8 people, all couples we'd known for years, people who'd been at our wedding, people who thought my best friend was like family. And I sent a simple group message. Before you hear other versions of this, I want to tell you directly. My wife and my best friend have been having an affair since September. I have documentation if anyone is curious. I won't be discussing it further, but I wanted you to hear it from me first. My phone was quiet for about 4 minutes. Then it exploded. I answered 2 texts, both from people who wanted to know if I was okay. The rest I left on read. Then I texted my best friend's sister, who I've always been closer to than he realized. Sent her the same message. She called me immediately. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message saying she was so sorry. And that she had always worried about him. And she had known something was wrong the past few months. I never called her back. I sent a brief factual message to my wife's charge nurse. A woman I'd met several times at hospital events, and who I knew my wife reported to indirectly. I told her I thought she should be aware that my wife was pregnant, and that the circumstances of the pregnancy might affect her work situation in coming weeks, and that I thought it was professional courtesy to give her a heads up. I sent it, turned my phone off, and took Harper to her riding lesson. When I turned my phone back on 2 hours later, I had 31 missed messages. My mother-in-law had called 6 times. My best friend had called 8 times, and sent a text that just said, please don't do this. Several friends, his business partner, a guy I'd met at their company's holiday party, asking if I could call him when I had a moment. I called my attorney instead. We filed for divorce that Monday morning, on grounds of adultery. Ohio allows this, and it goes into the record. Adultery also affects equitable distribution, in a way that gave me significant leverage on the house. That same Monday, my best friend's business partner called again. I answered this time. He was quiet on the phone. Asked me if the information was accurate. I said yes and told him I had documentation. He said he appreciated me being direct, and that he'd be in touch with his legal team. My best friend ran a small B2B consulting firm with this partner. They'd built it together over 6 years. I don't know exactly what conversation happened internally, but by Wednesday of that week my best friend had been bought out of his equity stake. The terms, from what I understand, were not favorable to him. My wife was placed on administrative review at the hospital. I don't know all the details because I stopped keeping track at a certain point. She hadn't told her employer about the pregnancy yet. She was about 14 weeks, and the circumstances of how they found out weren't ideal for her. The hospital has a conflict of interest policy relating to personal conduct and professional judgment. Whether that affected her status, I honestly stopped caring. I had my daughter, I had my house, I had documentation of everything. That was enough. 2 weeks after our conversation, my wife moved into a 2-bedroom apartment about 12 minutes away. We had a temporary custody arrangement through the court that gave her parenting time on alternating weekends and 2 weeknights. Harper thought her mom was going through something difficult and that she'd understand more when she was older. Harper is 7 and smarter than we give her credit for, but I protected her from the specifics, and I always will. My mother-in-law showed up at my door on a Thursday evening in February. She's a woman I've always genuinely liked. A retired school teacher from Zanesville, who raised 3 kids mostly alone after her husband passed. She stood on my porch with her coat on and a casserole dish. I'm not here to defend her, she said. I just wanted you to know that I know you didn't deserve this. I let her in. We ate the casserole at the kitchen table and talked about Harper for most of it. Before she left, she told me she planned to continue being in Harper's life, and that she hoped I would allow that. I told her that Harper needed her grandmother, and that nothing had changed on my end. That was the only conversation I had with anyone from her family that I don't regret. My best friend tried reaching out 4 times over the following month. 1 text, 2 calls, 1 handwritten letter that showed up in my mailbox. I didn't respond to any of them. The letter said he knew he had no right to ask anything from me, That he hadn't must meant for it to happen this way. That he thought about what he'd destroyed every single day. It was 3 pages. I read it once, put it in a drawer and haven't touched it since. The paternity test happened at 12 weeks postpartum, about 7 months after I filed. My attorney recommended it and my ex-wife agreed without argument. I had my own reasons for wanting to know. Not because I was reconsidering anything but because I needed it settled for the sake of any future custody or financial complications. The results came on a Tuesday. My best friend is the biological father. I forwarded the results to my attorney, updated the court file, and closed the folder on my desktop. That was the last administrative task I had on the matter. My ex-wife is now co-parenting an infant with my former best friend, while also sharing custody of our daughter with me. From what Harper mentions in passing, kids notice everything even when you try to shield them. It is not a simple household. My best friend has moved into her apartment. They are together officially, I think, or at least living like it. I genuinely hope the baby is healthy. That's not something I say to sound gracious. That's just where I landed. What I'm not doing is carrying the weight of their consequences. I have enough to carry of my own. Harper is thriving. She tested into her school's gifted reading program in April and spent the whole drive home asking me if that meant she was officially a genius. I told her it meant she was exactly herself, just more of it, and she seemed to find that acceptable. We're taking a road trip to the Grand Canyon this summer, just the 2 of us. She's been drawing maps on paper with different colored markers. Her level of planning for this trip puts my logistics work to shame. I got a promotion in March. Senior dispatcher, regional oversight for the Ohio and Kentucky corridor. More money, a little more flexibility to work remotely on certain datasets, which matters when you're a primary custodial parent and your daughter has a school schedule and a riding lesson on Saturdays. I started going to a men's group that a colleague mentioned. Not therapy exactly. More like a small group of guys in similar situations, who meet twice a month at a coffee shop near downtown. I never thought I'd be someone who did that. I was wrong about that, like I've been wrong about some other things. I'm not dating, not because I'm not ready eventually, but because I want a year or 2 of just being Harper's dad and building something that's actually mine. I spent 11 years building something with someone I thought I knew. I want to know what it looks like when it's only mine for a while before I share it again. Last week Harper and I were at the park near our neighborhood. She was on the swings and I was on the bench with coffee going through a work thing on my phone. She yelled for me to watch her jump off at the highest point. I put my phone down. She jumped, landed in the wood chips, arms out, laughing before she even hit the ground. I watched her get up, dust herself off and run back to get on the swings again. She's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. That's the whole thing really. That's what I needed to figure out. And it turns out all you have to do is stop building your life around people who are never building it with you. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to The Secret Vault. We'll see you next time.